Welcome to The Explainer. So, have you ever looked at a super familiar, seemingly simple piece of ancient text and suddenly realized, wait a minute, this is actually a blueprint for the entire universe? Well, today, we're diving into Psalm 1. Now, a lot of people just read this as a nice, moral poem about good behavior. But the sources we're exploring today completely flip that on its head. They reveal that it's actually this breathtaking cosmic map for the restoration of the whole universe. I mean, it is literally packed with cosmic geography and incredibly deep theological meaning. Which brings us to our massive central question. Is Psalm 1 just a poem, or is it a hidden map of the cosmos? We are going on a serious journey today. We're going to zoom all the way out from the image of just one single meditating person, right up to the epic scale of the new creation. And as you'll see, this short little text actually forms a bridge connecting the original Garden of Eden all the way to the end of history. All right, to kick things off, we really have to look at the very first word in the Hebrew text, which is ashrei. Now, this isn't just about, feeling happy or having a pretty good day. Not at all. It represents this incredibly profound state of blessedness, covenantal flourishing, and just totally holistic well-being. It's essentially the ultimate goal of human existence. But, and here's the catch, to actually achieve this true flourishing, our sources emphasize that we need a deep, intentional alignment with divine wisdom. And what's really fascinating here is how the text shows us the exact opposite of that wisdom. It tracks this crazy downward architectural descent into rebellion. Psalm 1 basically gives us a three-step progression of how the human heart progressively hardens when it wanders off. Step 1 is walking, which signifies just entertaining rival ideas, casually listening to bad advice. But then walking slows down to step 2, standing. Now we're looking at deliberate, active participation in a sinful path. And finally, all movement just completely stops at step 3, sitting. This is full-on identification with rebellion, literally pulling up a chair and taking a seat among people who actively mock sacred truths. It's this incredibly tragic progression of just becoming entirely stuck. But this actually sets up an absolutely incredible divine reversal. I want you to think back to Eden's fall in Genesis for a second. Adam and Eve were literally standing in sacred space, right? But they listened to a rival voice, the serpent, and ultimately they lost access to the tree of life. Well, while the tragedy of Genesis shows humanity losing the tree, Psalm 1 presents the exact reversal. By explicitly refusing the bad advice of the wicked and instead continually delighting in God's instruction, the righteous person doesn't just get access to a tree again. No, they actually become the flourishing tree itself. How wild is that? And this leads us to a massive, radical theological shift. It's what our sources call the portable Eden. Just think about that phrase for a second. In the original Genesis narrative, God took humanity and placed them into a physical garden. But here, through this continual meditation on God's word, that sacred space is actually internalized. The garden is no longer some physical location on a map that you have to travel to. It is placed literally within the believer. So by deeply internalizing truth, the righteous person essentially becomes this living, portable sanctuary, carrying God's life-giving presence around wherever they go. Okay, so what does a portable sanctuary actually look like in real, everyday practice? Well, it starts with a really deep devotion to God's revealed instruction. And that devotion creates this internal reality where you're carrying a life-giving presence, which the text symbolizes as streams of water. Because of that constant internal nourishment, the person manifests incredibly stable fruitfulness. They're yielding fruit in its proper season, basically to benefit everyone around them. Ultimately, they're serving as a miniature restored creation. The individual is functioning as a living, breathing picture of God's absolute, original, perfect design for humanity. So the psalm is basically building this massive, uncompromising contrast engine between two totally different ways of existing. On one side, you have the righteous. Their state is a flourishing creation. Their form is this highly structured tree with deep roots and heavy branches, and their destiny is absolute life instability. But then, look at the wicked. Their state is what the sources call anthropogenic decreation. Their form is just fragmented, weightless chaff, and their ultimate destiny is chaos and dust. I mean, just picture the difference between a massive, deeply rooted oak tree and a dried-up, fragile little leaf just getting completely battered around by a storm. It's this terrifying unraveling of what it actually means to be human. Let's actually pause and break down that phrase for a second, because it's fascinating. Anthropogenic decreation. It's a bit of a mouthful, I know, but in simple terms, it just means human-caused unraveling. You see, sin isn't just about breaking some arbitrary moral rule. It is a literal fracture in the very fabric of our reality. It's humanity actively hollowing itself out.
It leaves a person possessing maybe the outward appearance of life, but completely and utterly lacking any genuine, lasting substance on the inside.
Which brings us right to the central metaphor for all this decreation, and that is chaff. If you don't know what chaff is, it's basically weightless agricultural waste that just gets easily scattered by the wind. It entirely lacks permanence or structure or human agency. And there is a profound, tragic irony right here. See, humanity was originally given this high, noble vocation of exercising dominion over creation as God's image bearers, but rebellion strips literally all of that away. It turns us into passive, weightless dust, just blown around by the chaotic winds of the world, totally losing our true human calling. Now, let's zoom all the way out to the ultimate horizon of history. Psalm 1 is actually tracking this astonishing redemptive progression across the entire biblical narrative. In the beginning, in Eden, the tree of life is lost. Then, in ancient Israel, Psalm 1 introduces the righteous tree as this new covenant ideal. Fast forward to the 1st century, and the texts point to Christ as the ultimate true tree of life. And finally, in eternity, the new creation sees the tree of life permanently restored. So Psalm 1 is acting as this perfectly condensed map, tracing the entire journey from Genesis all the way to Revelation. And of course, this timeline inevitably leads us right to the climax, which is the final separation. We see this immense tension where our present earthly appearances, where, let's face it, the wicked might actually seem pretty powerful, finally give way to an unshakable divine verdict. The wind of God's judgment acts as a threshing force to reveal what truly has substance. The hollow chaff is permanently excluded from the assembly, the curse of Eden is completely removed, and only the way of righteousness remains in eternal communion with God. So the judgment is actually, in the end, an act of cosmic restoration. So when we strip away all of this incredible cosmic complexity, every single bit of it ultimately boils down to just one number: 2. There are only two paths, there are only two destinies, and fundamentally there are only two distinct ways of being human. You are either rooted in divine instruction, actively becoming a flourishing tree, or you're unraveling into weightless, scattered chaff. This ancient map leaves us with this ultimate, honestly kind of chilling summary. For the Lord knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked will perish. And it's crucial to understand this isn't just about God possessing some intellectual facts. Knowing here means God is in an intimate, covenantal relationship with the path of the righteous. This is exactly why this ancient text still matters so profoundly for us today. It's a huge reminder that true life depends entirely on our relational alignment with our Creator. To wrap up our explainer today, I want to leave you with a bit of a provocative question to help you evaluate your own trajectory. Which cosmic path are you currently traveling? Are you planting yourself by the living waters of truth, actively internalizing that portable Eden, or are you just drifting with the wind like chaff? I highly encourage you to dive into these sources deeper and really evaluate your own roots. Thank you so much for joining me as we unpacked the cosmic map of Psalm 1. Keep learning, keep growing, and I will see you next time.